Hey everybody, how you doing? This is the CFB Dynasty podcast. We have a great show coming up for you tonight. Tonight's topic, top 10 list early rankings for college fantasy football 2021. My name is Matt Knowles. With us tonight over here is the owner and founder of CFBDynasty.com, the one and only Brian McElfresh.
Hola.
And definitely not up here, definitely down there is a three-time champ in our CFB Dynasty College and Pro League, and one of our resident rankings experts, Mr. Danny Tucker. How you doing tonight, Danny?
Doing great.
All right, so tonight's show is going to be brought to you by two sponsors, Searchalytics, your website sucks, let us help, and Insymmetry Creations, where steampunk comics and metal collide. The links to both of them are going to be down in the comments at the end of this, or we'll give you the links at the end of the audio version of this as well. Anyways, Brian and Danny are chomping at the bit. They want to unveil their initial top 10 rankings by position for college fantasy football 2021. So let's get down to it. But wait, before we do that, there's multiple different ways that you can play college fantasy football. You can be playing seasonal, you can be playing dynasty, you can be playing college to pro dynasty. The rankings tonight are seasonal only, where it's redraft. You have your season this year, you're going to go redraft the next year. The rankings are going to change a little bit if you're looking at a dynasty or a college to pro dynasty. So these rankings are for seasonal draft only, right, Brian?
That's correct. Yep. And in the summertime, we'll have them all split out. So we'll have your standard redraft league, we'll have your keeper league rankings, and then we also do dynasty league rankings, which are commonly referred to as C2C or campus to kin. We call it dynasty. And we'll have that in the summertime. In addition to our top 10 tonight with the quarterback, running back, and receiver, we'll be launching the top 50 on the site with it. And then pretty soon after that, we'll have our deeper rankings that are available to subscribers only.
All right, good stuff. So we're going to get right down to it. We're going to be looking at the top 10 initial rankings for quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. And what we're going to do is we're going to go from 10 to 1 and give you what our top 10 to 1 is. Now, if this was the NFL, it'd be pretty easy for somebody to know who the top 10 guys are in the NFL coming back in. There's not going to be a lot of movement. There could be some surprises in these lists when you're talking about college guys, because your rosters are going to turn over every 4 to 5 to 6 years. So without further ado, let's start with the top 10 quarterbacks. Brian, who do we have at number 10 in the quarterback initial rankings for 2021?
So number 10, we have Desmond Ridder, quarterback, Cincinnati. He had about, depending on which league you have, a standard league, we have, looking at stats, 368 points last year, 36.8 points per game, and really had a nice improvement. We kind of thought we knew who he was as a freshman and sophomore, and then he made some strides last year. And as a fantasy player, he kind of made that jump from your quarterback 4, quarterback 3 that you can spot start for bye weeks to someone who is a legit everyday starter for your fantasy team. Great leap for him. Ridder comes in at number 10.
All right, Danny, who do we got at number 9?
At number 9, we got Dustin Crum, which could be argued to be higher, but we put him in there mainly because he did lose his top wide receiver option from last year, Isaiah McCoy. The offense is high-powered. They average over 600 yards per game last year. Definitely somebody that you want to look at and could potentially be ranked higher, just depending on what happens in the receiving corps for him.
All right, good stuff. We got number 10 and number 9 out of the way. Brian, let's get that number 8 out of the way.
We've got Sam Howell here. Now, he loses a ton of playmakers at the wide receiver position, loses running backs. So we don't really know for sure who's going to be his number 1 target and how he's going to respond to all of those missing pieces. But he still averaged 36 points a game last year, and he's been a really good player, throws a really, really nice deep ball, and he's a potential pro prospect in the NFL. So like the trend, like everything that UNC is doing, there's just a ton of unknown there. And if I had to pick the riskiest player in the top 10, it's probably Sam Howell. But, yeah, he comes in at number 8 for us.
All right, Danny, who we got at number 7 in the top quarterbacks in the initial rankings?
So at number 7, we got the new guy coming into Alabama, Bryce Young, coming as a redshirt freshman, very heralded, highly recruited guy. They do return to a 5-0 lineman next year, but he does have a stud wide receiver in John Mechie to throw the ball to. Gonna have to find playmakers quickly, but with a stable of backs, and it's Alabama. They reload every year. So
How do you think the offense? How do you think the offense changes with Bryce Young being more of a dual threat than Mac Jones was last year?
Well, I think that's going to be the interesting part, is how do they actually transition the offense? But it's Alabama. They reload.
Yeah, and Mac Jones had a really good year. And as anyone who's played fantasy a lot, the dual threat quarterbacks are really the ones that earn you those extra, rushing yards, get you the extra points. They're highly regarded from all the experts in college fantasy. So Bryce Young adds a different dimension to that Alabama offense. So, man, I definitely can't wait to see him. He's someone who could be even better than his ranking, but, he's got to prove it to us on the field first.
Yep.
All right, so number 6, that's where we're at, right? BMAC, I guess we're going back to you. Number 6 on the quarterback list.
Great. DJ
Angalele.
Okay, thanks.
I will take the hit if it's mispronounced.
He came in, was really impressive as a freshman for Trevor Lawrence, and he's a beast. Huge quarterback, rocket for an arm. Great weapons coming back with Justin Ross, healed up coming back. You've got Nada and just a great group of receivers to throw to. I think he's going to be – he's right up there. We got him at number 6. He's definitely one of the best players in the country next year. So, yeah, DJU, 6th.
Danny, you want to try and pronounce his last name just for the fun of it, or you want to move on to number 5?
Pass. Let's go to number 5.
Danny, who you got for number 5?
All right, well, coming in number 5, we got Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. Standard leagues last year, he put up about 36 points a game. He did throw for 2,400 yards, 26 touchdowns, only 3 picks. Good thing to know about Coastal Carolina, they do return 20 of 22 starters from a season ago, and they look to be much deeper at wide receiver this year. So easily a definite starter next year for you, somebody.
Talk about a guy coming out of nowhere as well. Nobody would have had anybody from Coastal Carolina other than a running back on their initial boards last year. And Coastal Carolina came in, and on both sides of the ball were really strong. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're able to do in a full actual college season, hopefully where you have a mix of teams in conference and out of conference.
If you didn't watch that offense in Coastal Carolina, do yourself a favor and make sure you watch them this year. It's just a unique blend of a few different styles that I think is going to spread throughout college football. At number 4, we've got Matt Corral for Ole Miss. This is somebody that I love, and he could make his way up to number 2, depending on how reports come out of spring and fall. But right now we've got him at 4th. He averaged 40 a game, 40 fantasy points a game last year, and they have a pretty favorable schedule this year. So Ole Miss opens up against Louisville, Austin Peay, Tulane. Then they go at Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, Auburn. But then as you get into the fantasy playoffs, you're looking at Liberty, Texas A&M, who should have a pretty good defense, and then Vanderbilt at Mississippi State. So I like Matt Corral a lot. Any Lane Kiffin quarterback is someone that is always a great target in fantasy. Good receivers coming back, although he loses his top target. So we'll see who replaces him there. But, yeah, Matt Corral comes in at number 4.
All right, Danny, let's just roll on down the list. We're at the top 3 quarterbacks in the initial rankings. Who do we have at number 3?
Checking at number 3, we got the UCF quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. It's just a fun offense. Returning 2 receivers, Robinson and O'Keefe, but they are losing a load of talent to the NFL. UCF is just one of those fun offenses to watch, though. So, I mean, I could easily see him blowing up again and have another great year for us.
All right, Brian, we got the top 2. Who do you have at number 2?
Spencer Rattler for Oklahoma, and it's just certainly a great combination of product of the system, always great quarterbacks coming out of Oklahoma, and Spencer Rattler's hyper talented. So he cut his teeth last year in a measly 35 fantasy points per game, joking, of course, as a freshman. So we expect him to take a leap. He's got awesome, talented receivers, gets Jaden Hazelwood back, who was the number 1 wide receiver the year before, and like basically 247 rivals all the recruiting rankings. He's back and healthy this year, and then you add Trajan Bridges and Marvin Mims, who crushed it. Spencer Rattler should have one heck of a season, and we've got him at number 2.
All right, Danny, drum roll, please. Who do we have at number 1 in the quarterback rankings?
I don't know if it's going to become to a surprise to much people, but it's Malik Willis from Liberty. I mean, the guy averaged 42 points a game last year. True dual threat quarterback, 20 touchdowns throwing, 944 yards on the ground, 14 rushing touchdowns. They returned 10 of 11 starters on offense. I mean, the stage is set for him to have another amazing year at quarterback.
Well, and the thing, too, about Malik Willis is people could say, oh, well, everybody was just playing in conference and he was playing lesser competition. Liberty played some solid squads. The only squad that tripped him up were my boys NC State, talking about playing in Power 5 schools. But they showed that they could play, and Malik Willis showed he could play against higher-level competition. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Liberty does with one more year under their belt of experience against higher-level competition.
Yep. Hugh Freeze, he's back again. Great. No, everybody thought he was going to be taking a job somewhere in the SEC, and boom, he's back at Liberty. Yeah, everything's set up for them to have a great season again.
All right, so we're going to have some follow-up questions at the end, but we do want to go through the top 10 at each of the top skill positions. Then we're going to get to those questions. So without further ado, we are going to roll right over to running backs, and we're going to we're going to go opposite this time. So last time we started with Brian with number 10. This time be Danny. Who do we have at number 10 on running backs?
All right, so checking in at number 10, we got Jahmyr Gibbs from Georgia Tech, who was a freshman last year, but he did not play like a freshman. Very powerful runner, pro potential all the way. They were transitioning to a new offense last year, so they have another year under their belt. Should be in for a fun season winning this year.
All right, Brian, who do we got at number 9 on the running backs list?
Jahmyr Gibbs, too. He's one of the top Devy players out there. Number 9, Ulysses Bentley at SMU as a freshman, came in, wasn't the starter at the beginning of the year, and then ended up averaging still over 20 points a game, at 20 fantasy points a game. So great season. We expect that to continue. Really fast running back, and I like it a lot. And Danny, if you want to trade and go with the snake style, I'll take number 8.
All right, Brian, the trade has been made.
Yes.
Who you got at number 8?
All right, so higher on him than most, but Jalen Berger out of Wisconsin. Obviously, everybody knows Wisconsin running backs. If you can nail the starter and they ride one guy, he's going to be a beast in fantasy, and I think that's going to continue with Berger. The added dimension this year is Mertz and the passing offense. If they're able to continue to kind of keep a little bit, keep an extra linebacker out of the box or bring in a smaller package because they're able to throw the ball, that's going to open up a little bit more for Jalen Berger, and Wisconsin continues to land great offensive line recruits and develop them. I love Berger at number 8, and he's got huge upside.
All right. At number 7, I'm actually going to take number 7. We have Ronnie Rivers from Fresno State. Anybody that plays in leagues with me knows I'm a big fan, not only of my own team, NC State, but I do like a lot of the West Coast style teams, not West Coast offenses, but college West Coast teams, Fresno State, Boise State, Oregon. They're really teams I just gravitate towards. And Ronnie Rivers is going to be one of the super seniors coming back this year. Did not expect to see Ronnie Rivers back in a Fresno State uniform for 2021. Ronnie Rivers is the workhorse, the bell cow for that offense. And he's not coming back in 2021 to sit on the bench. He's coming back in 2021 to have the best season of his career. And I think that you're going to get very solid, consistent production out of him week in and week out for Fresno State.
Absolutely agree.
All right, so we've been all over the place. Let's spin the top, and we're going to go back to Danny. What you got for number 6?
So at number 6, we're bringing in Kevin Marks from Buffalo, who is replacing the fantastic Jarrett Patterson, who's headed off to the NFL. Marks managed 741 yards last year, still in 7 touchdowns, playing behind Patterson, who got all the love. He's a very physical runner. He's built to carry the load for the Buffs. Should be in for a good season.
I tell you what, when you have a guy that has 740 something yards, and you can say, man, Jarrett Patterson almost had that in one game.
Yep.
But no, for real though, that's going to be somebody to keep our eyes on, because Buffalo does put up a lot of yards. We'll be able to see, was it Patterson that was putting it up, or was it Buffalo being dominating up front that was helping to put it up? So it'll be something to keep our eyes on.
Yep.
All right, BMAC, what we have for number 5?
Kyron Williams out of Notre Dame averaged almost 21 points a game in fantasy last year, and he really just claimed the running back 1 job going into the season. He was really an unknown. I remember getting him super late in the deepest of drafts. But he ended up winning the job. You could see week 1, he was really, really good. So he had 1,125 yards, 13 touchdowns last year on the ground, and also did some damage through the air too. He's got a good running back behind him in Chris Tyree, but Kyron's the guy, and I think he'll have a beast of a year this year for Notre Dame as they look to continue to build on what they've done under Brian Kelly.
And BMAC, I know that you're a big, huge fan of Kyron Williams, so much so that if you listen to our other podcasts, he's one of the guys you said should be on the new college football cover. If there was one for this season, you said he should be a candidate to be on the cover. That's how much you like him.
Yeah, I've got him in a lot of leagues, and I think he would be a popular pick because it's Notre Dame. Not so much because I like him, but I do like his running style quite a bit.
All right, so that was number 5. So now we're at number 4. Danny, who's the number 4 guy on the list?
Oh, at number 4, we got Sincere McCormick, another small school guy out of UTSA. Put up 23 points a game last year, almost 1,500 yards on the ground, 11 touchdowns. Clearly the lead back will put up fantasy numbers every week. You do want to avoid him if he plays some Power 5 teams like an LSU or something like that. But other than that, clearly a starter.
All right, BMAC, number 3.
Bijan Robinson out of Texas had a really fantastic end to the season, and that's really what you look for out of these freshmen. You never know. Some of the true freshmen will come out and just ball right out of the gate, but a lot of them, you really see them pop by the end of the year, and that's what happened with Bijan. So, he's not playing in the most well-known for defense league, but ended the year against Colorado, 10 carries, 183 yards, and a touchdown. The game before that, 172 yards and 3 touchdowns against Kansas State. I expect to see more. And then you've got Sarkisian, who is known for riding his running back 1. Ingram transferred out. The stage is really set for Robinson to have a bust-out season.
All right, we're up to the top 2 in running backs in the running back rankings for 2021, the initial running back rankings. Danny, who do we got at number 2?
At number 2, Mohamed Ibrahim checks in from Minnesota. Very powerful runner. Gets back most of his O-line and returns a couple guys who opted out last season. Built for another good season. Had 15 touchdowns last year, over 1,000 yards in a shortened season. expect good things. I mean, he could easily be the number one fantasy back by the time season's over next year.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
5 games, right? 1,000 yards in
Yeah,
5
5
games.
games.
Yeah, when he came in, it changed the face of fantasy football last year. He really changed a lot of leagues when he came in doing what he did.
Yep.
All right, Danny, got to say the number one in quarterbacks. BMAC, who do you got for number one in running backs?
Oh, Brees Hall, man, he is a beast, and he's just he's the feature player for Iowa State, and that's just going to continue. 1,500 yards, 21 touchdowns on the ground last year, 23 catches, and a couple extra touchdowns through the air. He's just their feature player, but he's an absolute outstanding running back who we'll expect to watch him for years to come in the NFL. I really liked the backup, Jeriel Brock, but Brees Hall is just too good. And if he's healthy and fresh, he just needs to get the ball.
All right, everyone, we have gotten through the top 10 quarterbacks and the top 10 running backs. Now it's time for top 10 wide receivers. And Danny, starting with you again this time. Who do we got at number 10 wide receivers?
At number 10, we're checking in John Mechie from Alabama. Going to be stepping into the lead role this year. Played very well as a freshman last year with 55 catches, just over 900 yards. Played behind Devontae Smith, who everybody knows had just a ridiculous season. As long as Bryce Young can prove to throw the ball and be accurate with it, Mechie's in for another strong candidacy this year.
I think Mechie, too, at the beginning of the season, when you had Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith both healthy, the only 3 wide receivers on the squad that even caught balls were those 3 guys. It was Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, and John Mechie. So now you're going to be moving Smith and Waddle out. John Mechie has a chance to have a monster season this year, even with all the weapons that are moving out, because like as you always say, Alabama just reloads.
Well, that's the thing. They proved last year when Smith was the only guy and teams tried to double him, Alabama still made sure he touched the football. So if Mechie is the guy, Alabama's going to make sure he touches the football. That's just how it works there.
All right, B-Mac, number 9 on wide receivers. Who do you got?
We've got Drake London, who led USC in receiving yards last year, even though he wasn't really the primary target. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyler Vaughn's exit to the NFL, and Drake London's going to assume that role as the wide receiver number 1 with Brew McCoy, who's going to do well also, and expect Gary Bryant to get some stats too. But it's going to be spread around because that's what Graham Harrell does at USC as the offensive coordinator and more of an air raid type system with Keaton Slovis. Love Drake London's upside. He definitely has potential to move up from our number 9 receiver, but that's where we've got him for right now.
All right, Danny, what do we got at number 8 on wide receivers?
At number 8, we're checking in Reggie Roberson from SMU. He did have a shortened season last year due to an injury. But he has home run ability. Every time he touched the ball, for some reason, every time you watch an SMU game, he's getting behind defenses. He does get a new quarterback this year, but it doesn't seem to ever slow down SMU. They just continue producing quality number 1 wide receivers in fantasy.
I would absolutely agree with that. If you're wide receiver 1 at SMU, you know you're going to be getting some big fantasy stats. All right, Brian, who do we have at number 7 on the wide receivers?
Kayshon Boutte from LSU. He's going to be a sophomore, 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. And this one's an interesting one because LSU still, we don't really know who they are offensively, but we think they will pick up at least to be part of what they were as an offense a couple years ago. They're still good last year, but as wide receivers like Terrace Marshall, Eric Gilbert kind of opted out. Jamar Chase didn't play last year. Kayshon took over, and he ended the year really strong. So against Alabama last year, 8 catches, 111 yards. Against Florida, 5 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown. Against Ole Miss to end the season, 14 catches, 308 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's going to be the primary target for the next couple of years there at LSU, and he's going to be a great fantasy producer.
All right, Danny, we are back to number 6.
At number 6, we have Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. He was a guy last year that came out of nowhere and just surprised everybody, taking the number 1 role in Oklahoma. He will have his work cut out for him with Hasselwood coming back this year. Weiss proved to be a viable option last year. Bridges, I mean, that was an amazing receiving core they brought in the year before. But Mims clearly looks to be legit number 1 for Oklahoma.
Yeah, when Mims came in last year as the wide receiver 5, for him to lead their team the way he did, wow, who knows what's going to happen this year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brian, number 5 on the wide receivers, what you got?
Memphis Tigers, Calvin Austin III. You're looking for a volume of catches here. New quarterback coming in, Grant Gunnell as a transfer, and he had 63 catches, 1,000 yards last year and 11 touchdowns, and that should just continue as he is the primary target for Memphis this year.
All right, rolling right along. Danny, number 4 on the wide receiver list.
At number 4, we have Khalil Shakur from Boise. Averaged 23.8 points a game last year. If you look at the distribution of the ball last year, it wasn't even close. Shakur was easily the number 1 receiver for them, the top target guy. I can't even tell you the odds of it. I mean, it was just insane. The offense should be ready to run again this year with a good running game, so he should have plenty of opportunity to hold up his end of the bargain at number.
All right, Brian, what you got at number 3? We're in the top 3 wide receivers now.
Jalen Robinson, UCF, smaller receiver. Again, looking for volume of catches here and a great offense with a great quarterback. New coaching taking over, but you have the exit of Marlon Williams, who led the team last year with 71 catches, 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. Jalen Robinson should pick some of that production right up as the number 1 target for Dylan Gabriel, and should have a big season out of UCF.
Yep, I agree. See, I've always thought they used him a little wrong. Smaller statured guy. I always thought he should have been a slot receiver, inside, outside. I feel like they play him outside a lot, but his touches that he's going to get this year should just blow the lid off of it.
Yep.
All right, speaking about blowing the lid off of it, Danny, let's blow the lid off of the number 2 wide receiver on the list. Who you got?
This is your man, Romeo Doubs of Nevada.
That's right. I'm surprised you guys have him so low on the list. Come on, fellas.
I know, man. He's only got 1 spot to go from here, man. But at 58 catches, 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns, and the one podcast you were talking about how well he did at the end of the season to help people win fantasy leagues last year, or at least to move on in weeks. The guy's got home run ability. He's got the size, the freakish athletic ability. We had a long talk about who should be at 1 and 2 in our receiver rankings, because we feel like he's very deserving of the position.
All right, Brian, let's figure out who the number 1 guy is, the guy that unseated the guy who I think should be at number 1. Who did you guys wrongly put at number 1 ahead of Doubs?
David Bell for Purdue. So 25 points a game, fantasy points a game, was a point better than Romeo Doubs last year. And he adds the production of Rondale Moore, taking over completely as wide receiver number 1. Rondale Moore didn't play the whole year, but still, David Bell is going to be in there. Fantastic offense. And he's also just a great player, definitely an NFL-style player, 6'2", 205. But he's got it all. He's a great red zone target. He's fast, great route runner. So I expect him to get, 11 plus targets a game. And whether or not it's David Sinclair or Jack Plummer that wins that job, Bell is going to be a beast next year.
All right, so we got to the end of the rankings. We got a couple of follow-up questions. The one thing I will say, though, is if you find yourself in a fantasy draft and you find yourself with multiple players on any of these top 10 lists on your team, you are probably going to be in for a really good season. And I want to know what knuckleheads are in this league with you, because if you have multiples of these guys, you're going to have a good season. So we got a couple follow-up questions here. So going to pose this one to both of you. What person at any position on these lists do you feel most confident about performing up to the expectations or exceeding them? And it doesn't have to be the number one guy, because the number one guy, you know, they may only have some nowhere to go but down. You can have somebody else on the list that's number 9, and you may say, man, this guy, he's definitely going to be the 9th guy, or he has a chance to be the top guy. Who would you pick to be your guy that at any one of those quarterback, wide receiver, running backs that you feel the most confident about them meeting or exceeding their expectations this year?
I'll go ahead and start. Mine is Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. Like I said earlier, they returned 20 of 22 starters. Brian was talking about how fun that offense is and innovative that offense is to watch. I don't know. I just don't see how he could underperform. I mean, coming in at number 5 in our rankings, he could easily rise in our rankings. So he's one that I firmly believe will hold up his end of the bargain this year.
I'm gonna roll with I think Kevin Marks. As he's our 6th ranked running back, he averaged just under 19 fantasy points per game as the backup last year, and Buffalo just likes to run the ball. It's part of the offense. While I don't think he's Jared Patterson, I still think he's gonna be really productive, and I think he's gonna do. I think he'll beat out a couple of the people potentially above him, if everything plays out well for Buffalo. And some of the things we'll kind of uncover with our content coming up on cfbdynasty.com with our expert Q&A, where we, kind of talk through and figure out like a writer with Buffalo and hear how the offensive line's progressing. How does it compare to last year? Some of that information can sway us, but I'm pretty confident Marks is going to be one of the top 5, top 6 running backs.
I think I'm going to jump in on this one. I think DJU from Clemson, not only is he going to be where you guys have him in the rankings, but I think it is almost a shoo-in that he is going to be one of the top quarterbacks and has a chance to just blow the lid off. He got the 1 start last year in a nationally televised game, did really good in that game for his first start to come in and perform the way he did. For it to be his show, his offense now, I think he has a chance to be a special quarterback.
I think in the red zone too, especially inside the 5, you're going to see Clemson use him Tebow-ish. Like, I'm not super impressed with Jalen Dixon, but this guy is a beast. And I think that they can run him. He can just run some linebackers over.
All right, Brian, I'm going to direct the next question to you. Danny, you can answer if you want to, but I'm going to start with Brian. Who is in the most tenuous position right now, the person you think could move the most? Say, for instance, a QB in a camp battle, or a running back that could find themselves in a running back by committee situation. Who do you think is the most tenuous position right now?
For the guys that we mentioned, I'd have to say Sam Howell for North Carolina. Just losing the top 2 targets, losing his top 2 running backs. What if their running game isn't quite as good as it was, and there's more pressure on Howell to perform? And what if the receivers aren't ready? So we'll see. We've got him at number 8 because, he's kind of earned that spot, and he's really, performed great so far in his career. But there's definitely a lot of question marks surrounding him in that offense.
All right, Danny, you have somebody you want to throw into this? You want to move on to the next question?
Go ahead and move on, because I'm going to agree 100% with Sam Howell.
All right, so Danny, we're actually going to flip-flop some questions here. What person in the top 10 are you most interested to see how they're going to shake out?
All right, and I might catch slack for it, but it is Marvin Mims. And the reason for that is the production that's coming back to join him in the receiving corps. Getting Hasselwood back, Weiss, Bridges, if they distribute the ball easily, it's going to take a lot of touches away from Mims, because they had one of the most heralded wide receiver classes the year before. So it's just going to be interesting. Do they continue to push the ball to Mims when they get everybody back, or do they distribute it? I mean, they got enough talent to do it, and they had some good receivers signed this year. So I think the receiving production at Oklahoma is going to be the easiest one to watch.
Brian, you got one for that question?
Someone that I'm most interested in.
What person in the top 10 are you most interested to see how they shake out? Yeah.
Jalen Berger. Yes, partially this is personal because I've got him in multiple leagues, but I really like watching Wisconsin football. I like the running game, and I think he's a really elite talent. So does he have that jump in the offseason in the weight room from a freshman to a sophomore that's going to make him stand out and potentially push him to be a top 5 fantasy back or better in that Wisconsin scheme? It can definitely happen. Can't wait to watch and see the first few games how Jalen Berger's looking.
All right, last question we got. What player who is not in the top 10, somebody we have not mentioned yet, do you think could find his way there based on a good spring or fall camp? So if we were doing this podcast in, say, July, what's the most likely name you think could be on there at that point if they have a good spring camp or fall camp?
I'll give you 3, one at each position. So at wide receiver for me, Corey Rucker, Arkansas State, had a big 4-touchdown game. They're losing Adams, their top receiver at Arkansas State, and it seems like he'll naturally just fit in as wide receiver 1 for an offense that should be really good. It just so happens that his quarterback is also someone that I think could produce as a top 10 performer, Lane Hatcher at Arkansas State. So it was really weird last year. They basically split time between he and Logan Bonner. Well, Logan Bonner transferred out. Butch Jones does come in. You can insert your Butch Jones jokes if you want to, but he's had some good offenses in the past, and he retained the offensive coordinator at Arkansas State. So with that familiarity and now being the main guy, I really like Lane Hatcher. I think they can do some damage at Arkansas State. And then at running back, simply because of talent, we have him at 11, just outside our top 10, Tank Bigsby at Auburn. Not a ton of known going in with the new coaching switch. How is the O-line? What kind of play style are they going to run? It's going to be interesting to see how they use Tank Bigsby, but he is flat out awesome, future NFL running back. Certainly could be a top 10 producer.
Danny, you got anybody? I can tell you that one of the ones for me is somebody we talked about beforehand, and that's Ty Chandler, unless you want to talk about him, Danny.
No, you can go ahead with him. I got somebody else.
All right. Ty Chandler, running back right now in the rankings, he's barely in the top 30, but that's somebody who I think could find his way. And again, I'm not the one putting the rankings together. Brian and Danny are, but knowing the history that North Carolina has right now with running backs putting up huge numbers, Ty Chandler has the ability or the potential to come in here and fill that double-headed gap of these other 2 guys. So I think there's a very good chance that you could see Ty Chandler moving his way up the rankings if everything falls correctly. Yeah, Danny, who you got?
That Carolina Blues just coming right out of you.
Man, be quiet with that. Nope, I don't even want to hear that. No, sir. Just speaking the facts, man.
One of the guys I got that could see his way up our list is Lane Hatcher from Arkansas State. He's been splitting reps with Bonner. Bonner has left. Hatcher will now be the man. He could easily find his way moving up our quarterback rankings, depending on how the offense all comes together. But being the man and getting the sole work now at the quarterback position, easily he could climb our rankings from us.
All right, good stuff. Well, there you have it, everybody. We've just gone through the initial top 10s at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. BMAC, as the owner and founder of CFB Dynasty, is there anything else you want to say to get people excited about the college football season that is upcoming, or the college fantasy season that's upcoming, what's going to be happening on CFB Dynasty? Let them know what's up.
Well, all right. There's a lot to be thankful for and excited about. I'm super pumped about the fans coming back. We're gonna have, or at least Alabama and a few other stadiums. Texas, I think, already announced they're gonna have full stadiums. We got the video game coming back eventually, one of these years. But yeah, now's a great time. We've got the first mock draft I just participated in with Mike Bainbridge and a few other great collection of college fantasy nuts who are doing mock drafts here in February and March. But we'll have that published and we'll do a podcast on that next. Super excited to kind of show you guys how everyone kind of fell into these different CFF experts. And we'll go over that. We'll be publishing the rankings here pretty soon. So yeah, super pumped. A lot of good things. We're going to start our interview rounds with all the writers at individual schools here in a week or so. Matt and the rest of us will be reaching out. So we're excited about it.
All right. Sounds awesome. On behalf for Danny Tucker and Brian McKelfish, my name is Matt Knowles. We hope you guys have loved this podcast. Can't wait to get another one out there for you guys. Once again, don't forget to go log in and subscribe to CFBDynasty.com. See you guys next time.
Boom. See you guys
Later.